the synagogue is often referred to as temple, and yet it's not really a temple. So why is the synagogue referred to as the temple, and why is going to synagogue called going to temple? That might just seem very confusing to somebody who doesn't understand all of that.
Totally.
I'm glad you're getting that one, because I always thought the synagogue was conservative, because in Greensboro that's the way it was, and the temple was reformed. That's the way I thought it was.
That's so funny.
Here, and it's Temple Israel and Temple Bethel, and they're both
temples. So what do you do?
Yeah.
It's very confusing. So there's kind of three ways you'll hear a Jewish house of faith referred to. Shul. It's either a shul, a synagogue, or a temple. The idea of calling a house of faith a temple comes from the capital T temple in capital J Jerusalem, right? That the original place where we worshiped God was in the temple in Jerusalem. There was no such thing as a synagogue until maybe 200-300 years before the Common Era, and the temple was where you talked to God, and you talked to God by making a holy barbecue, right? You'd like bring your best goat, and then you'd give it to the priests, and the priests would slaughter that goat and do their thing and give you back, interestingly, like give you back all the parts that humans eat of a goat, and like the parts that God wanted happened to be the parts that humans don't tend to eat anyway, which is very useful. And then the temple was destroyed, right? And no longer was that kind of worship possible because there was no place clean enough to do that, right? There was no place holy enough for that kind of worship. And so the rabbis of the time literally transformed Judaism into the kind of religion that you could practice without slaughtering a bunch of goats in one particular place in the world. And that's kind of the beginning of what is now known as synagogues. So we often refer to our houses of worship as little T temples, kind of as a nod to the big T temple in Jerusalem. But you also hear of them as synagogues. Synagogue is a Greek word, and I believe its origin has to do with kind of like a house of assembly. It's a gathering place. And a shul is, I believe shul comes from the Yiddish, and is similarly like a gathering place. So it's interchangeable. You'll find that, again, some Jews you ask will tell you that like shul is the only way to actually refer to it, and temple is what the Goyish Jews say, right? Only the Goyish Jews call it synagogue. You'll also find people who only ever think of it as temple, only ever think of it as synagogue. Sometimes it really just has to do with like what rolls off your tongue, but they're all correct and appropriate, I think.
And the people like my parents' age, and I think New York, the Brooklyn Jewish people, it's shul. I think it's a generational thing too. People our age, at your age, don't call it shul. At least down here, I'd never heard anybody call it shul.
It's definitely like an Eastern European Ashkenazi thing.
Right.